going to be go, go, go all the way this time. Hello and a warm welcome to those of you joining us again after the disappointment of Monday for this evening's launch of Ariane-Start Flight 101 with Sirius 2 and CAKRAWARTA 1. The launcher you've been admiring on your screen for several minutes is an Ariane 44L. With its 4 solid propellant boosters, this is the most powerful of the Ariane 4 launcher family. The English language commentary team is unchanged, namely Eckhard Weinrich. Say hello to the people, Eckhard.
Hello.
And Simon Hayes. At 35 minutes from scheduled liftoff, we can report an unbroken set of green indicators on the status panel, but a quick word about the problem we had on Monday and which prevented a launch yesterday, Eckhard.
The problem we had was a safety problem in the sense that we had winds at high altitude which prevented from launching in safe conditions, and so we would like to protect the coastal area, namely Kourou, from the debris in case of an accident.
This broadcast is going out live to viewers at 7 sites in France, Germany, Sweden, Denmark, Jakarta, Washington DC and Tokyo, viewers here in French Guiana, and those taking the Space Night TV program in Germany. Launcher window times are being displayed at the bottom of your screen. We have a window of 45 minutes as on Monday for this flight, opening at 6:48 p.m. local time. This means a borderline daylight situation, roughly 2 hours earlier than normal liftoff for a geostationary transfer orbit. Hookup for this broadcast uses 3 satellites, an Intelsat, a Eutelsat and a Telsat. Now we'll take a look at the launcher, the Ariane 44L for this flight, shown here in kit form.
Yes, the animation describes the composition, characteristics and the main contractors of the various elements which constitutes this Ariane 4 launch vehicle. It is the 72nd Ariane 4 and the 25th in the 44 configuration. This means the core vehicle with 4 liquid propellant strap-on boosters. Production authority is Ariane-Start and industrial architect is Aerospatiale. And under the fairing we have tonight
2 satellites in their respective positions. Sirius is on top of the Spelter structure, and it'll be launched first. Underneath, CAKRAWARTA is inside the Spelter and will be released 5 minutes after its co-passenger.
And you see the Ariane launch site is really unique. One can really imagine that at this close location to the equator you can take advantage of the high Earth rotation velocity or slingshot effect.
Both these telecommunication satellites will be placed into elliptical geostationary transfer orbit at an apogee altitude of 36,000 kilometers. The orbit stations you'll see in a second on your screen correspond to the Atlantic, just off the coast of Gabon for Sirius, and a location over the Java Sea for CAKRAWARTA. This will be the 9th Ariane-Start launch this year, with Flight 100, the 502 launch, and now Flight 102 tightly packed into a 7-week period.
And here we have one of the coordinators of the range, which is Thierry Bouffard tonight, and mission director Rémi Cochet from Ariane-Start.
In a moment we shall be showing you some film on the organization backing Ariane launch operations here in Kourou. This is principally for those of you joining us for the first time, or if you were with us on Monday the second time. And here is our film on the organization we mentioned just now.
Formed in 1980 as the first industrial and commercial space transportation company in the world, Ariane Space operates the Ariane launch system developed by the French space agency CNES on behalf of the European Space Agency ESA. Ariane Space demonstrates European scientific and technical capabilities and has the backing of the space industry and banks of 13 countries. Ariane Space operates worldwide, with its European headquarters at Évry, just outside Paris in France, a subsidiary in Washington, D.C. in the USA, a branch office in the Asia-Pacific zone located in Tokyo in Japan, and a launch complex in Kourou, French Guiana, with a unique geographical position close to the equator. Combined with the extremely accurate orbit injection of Ariane, this equatorial position extends the life of the satellites. Constantly adjusting to changes in international market demand, Ariane provides customers with a complete, personalized range of launch services based on extensive experience and a highly reliable vehicle which can place payloads of up to 4.8 metric tons with Ariane 4 and in the near future 7 tons with Ariane 5 directly into orbit. Arianespace is engaged in a long-term production program with its European space industry partners. The manufacturing, which follows a tight quality policy, is permanently aimed at meeting customer requirements worldwide. "12,000 highly qualified Europeans are engaged in this manufacturing activity. The success of this venture is largely due to the power and cohesion of the industrial partners involved. The principal contractors are Aerospatiale, SEP, DASA, the Fiat Group, Matra Marconi Space, CASA, Oerlikon Contrabes. The various launcher sub-assemblies are built in Europe and taken by sea, air and land to the Kourou spaceport.
Inside 29 minutes to liftoff and all is green.
And we are at the beginning of a waiting period of 25 minutes, which will lead us to the beginning of the synchronized sequence at -6 minutes. Here are some key players of tonight: Tommy Anderson from NSAB and Guy Burl from Aerospatiale, very famous after their run behind the satellite.
We shall see some pictures of that sporting event in just a few moments. Sirius 2 will be operated by the Swedish company NSAB and will replace the earlier Sirius 1 and Tele-X satellites. Tele-X was launched on Ariane back in 1989.
We're close to the polar circle, in a remote place in northern Sweden. Further south in Europe, aimed at the same satellite. This is Sirius 2, built for analog and digital services all over Europe.
The key to that is our cooperation with GE American. By combining their needs and our needs in one multi-mission satellite, we can both benefit from the cost efficiency of a big satellite.
Across the country or around the world, when it comes to value, service, and productivity in critical communication services, you can count on GE Americom. At GE Americom, our business is helping yours.
Sirius 2, an impressive footprint. NSAB is the owner of the Sirius satellites. Supporting NSAB are companies with extensive skills and knowledge about broadcasting and satellites. Telecom, sales and marketing of satellites. Denmark in charge of the Danish market. The Swedish Space Corporation, owners of S-Range, where they operate Sirius 1 and Tele-X. They will control Sirius 2 and 3. The future.
Actually, Sirius 2 is already sold out. So, we have ordered Sirius 3. It is a smaller satellite than Sirius 2. It has 14 transponders in one beam, and it has about the same footprint and the same services as the Nordic beam of Sirius 2. It will be launched in August next year.
Probably the most Swedish network in the world.
That was interesting, Eckhart. There was a strong GE American flavor in this clip. That was interesting. There was a lot about GE American there. So what's the connection?
Well, GE is NSAB's main customer or even partner because GE has financed half of the Sirius 2 program. It will become a new powerful European operator. And we have two of the key players of the other key players of the Sirius team. Per Zetterquist.
And now on Sirius we have
Klaas Engart here.
So, sorry, we have some details of the Sirius satellite campaign just coming up.
The aerospatiale-built Sirius 2 satellite was flown into Cayenne-Rochambeau direct from Cannes in France, arriving on 11th October. Sirius 2 was then taken to the S1A preparation building, extracted from its container and placed in a vertical position. The satellite underwent a series of system tests before the solar panels were fit. When this work has been completed and deployment of the panels checked, Sirius 2 was loaded into the special payload container for transfer to the S3B building near to the launch pad. This journey took place the day after the Ariane 502 flight under the close supervision of the NSAB and Aerospatial Payload Manager, so close that they actually ran alongside the container for the whole of the 13-kilometer trip. Time for the run, 1 hour. The second phase of preparation involved fueling the satellite with MON and MMH and weighing in actual flight configuration. Sirius was finally encapsulated with its co-passenger inside the fairing and hoisted to the payload platform in the gantry for mating with the launcher just 3 days before liftoff.
We should indeed pay tribute to the Sirius teams for the way they've dealt with the delays that have occurred over the last few weeks, and of course their patience over the last 48 hours. And also congratulations to Aerospatiale for the 3 new satellite build contracts which they've booked in the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, we have here on the screen the payload responsible of the CAKRAWARTA launch team, and mainly Mr. Chen Chow from Media Citra, Indonesia, and Steve Nichols from Orbital.
CAKRAWARTA 1 will be operated by Media Citra INDOSTAR, the first Indonesian private satellite system operator.
This launch is an historic occasion. For the first time, a commercial direct broadcast satellite placed in geostationary orbit will bring direct-to-home multi-channel digital television to an entire archipelago nation comprising more than 13,000 islands. The satellite, named CAKRAWARTA by Indonesia's President Suharto, brings to life the vision of a consortium of public and private companies under the leadership of Media Citra INDOSTAR. Now, Indonesia's most remote islands will have access to clear, dependable television and multimedia signals for industry, education, and entertainment. With CAKRAWARTA, which means information weapon, families all over Indonesia will be able to access direct satellite broadcasts using affordable, compact equipment. And because CAKRAWARTA is the world's first commercial S-band satellite, its broadcasts will be unaffected by Indonesia's daily rainfall. CAKRAWARTA is the culmination of careful design and development. One of Orbital's family of small, lightweight commercial satellites, CAKRAWARTA utilizes space-proven technology to provide high reliability at an affordable cost never before possible. 5 high-power transponders provide up to 40 channels of digitally compressed TV. And the 3-axis stabilized satellite is fueled for 12 years of station-keeping operations. Orbital delivered CAKRAWARTA as a complete turnkey system with ground stations for both satellite control and program feed. It is the first in a planned constellation of small satellites, allowing Media Citra INDOSTAR the flexibility to grow as revenues expand. With the launch of CAKRAWARTA, space communications enters a new era where smaller satellites offer competitive opportunities with significantly lower upfront capital risk. And Orbital is at the forefront of this new age, with a family of small satellites designed and engineered to offer opportunities in direct broadcast satellite communications.
The prime for CAKRAWARTA 1 is Orbital Science Corporation, OSC. OSC has absorbed the satellite activity of CTA, the designer of this new style spacecraft. And now a word perhaps on the status panel, Eckhart.
Yes, we have no problem. The status panel shows the readiness of all main components of the launch system, as the base, which comprises mainly ground and flight safety, radar, telemetry and weather forecast, then the launch vehicle itself, and finally the passengers. And here we see two pilots of the CAKRAWARTA spacecraft, Mr. Chen Chao and Steve Nichols.
And in a moment we have some more film on CAKRAWARTA, the satellite campaign.
The CAKRAWARTA satellite arrived in French Guiana on 21st August. Preparation work commenced without delay in the S1B facility at the Guyana Space Center with a series of integrated system tests. During this initial phase, the solid propellant apogee kick motor for CAKRAWARTA was checked out separately in the S2 building. This included X-ray inspection. The satellite was placed in the payload container for transfer to the S3 building, where it was balanced, empty of propellant, inside a helium tent. Following a second visit to S1B for integration of the apogee motor, CAKRAWARTA received its load of liquid propellant before integration in the SPELDA structure, encapsulation with SIRIUS, and transfer to the launch zone.
Status is all green, and we are still ready to go. I should mention that we have also the presence of Mr. R.I.F. Juvanto, Director of Media Citra INDOSTAR, among our guests.
This is the first time, of course, that a satellite of this type has been prepared at the Guyana Space Center. So valuable experience, new experience for Kourou personnel and, of course, OSC.
Another look on Chris Baran from Orbital. And now we might see the launch vehicle campaign.
Switching indeed from the two passengers to the launch vehicle itself and its preparation. The launcher campaign is the culmination of a production cycle lasting 24 months. The carrier vessel Toucan collects the bits and pieces of the launcher from various European ports before the long trip across the Atlantic to French Guiana. Once ashore, the containers are taken to the assembly zone for the first part of the 27 working day preparation campaign. The first stage is swung into the vertical position and traversed onto the hook system on the launch table. Ariane already stands 25 meters high. Remember, we're dealing with very substantial proportions, a total height of 56 meters and a liftoff mass of 480 metric tons. The second stage, with its single Viking engine, is hoisted into position. The 4 liquid propellant boosters are mated with the core body, and the cryogenic third stage is erected. Assembly takes up the first 2 weeks of the campaign and involves how many people?
Well, it's astonishingly very few people. Around 10 operational people are there, but of course directly involved in the campaign are about 300 on Ariane-Space and contractor side and 600 on CSG side.
The backup services. The last element added in the assembly dock before the launcher is transferred to the forward zone is the vehicle equipment bay, often referred to as the brain of the Ariane launcher. This contains the onboard computer, the inertial guidance system and other electronic equipment. The launcher, less the upper composite, is then ready to roll out to the forward zone. The launcher on its table is towed up the 1 kilometer double rail track to the forward zone. Gently, gently, the trip takes a full hour. The cryogenic arms for fueling the third stage close on to the launcher, and the huge service gantry is moved in to provide access for final checkout. And just 3 days before liftoff, integration of the payload composite with our Ariane 44L. The gantry stays in place until 6 hours before liftoff. Anything special about this campaign?
Yeah, this time, there was some compression, of course. In order to reach the target launch date of the 10th, we did a compression of day minus 6 and 5, as well as day minus 4 and 3 into 2 days, which is a huge effort, and it's worth to do it because we have just the weather to compete with, and we hope that this will be going straight through tonight.
A time check, under 50 minutes to go, and all is nice and green. We have now some clips on 2 major events in the Ariane story.
Simon, you have seen many launches. There was an important milestone this year beside the second Ariane 5 launch we'll talk later about. We had the 100th Ariane flight on September 23. We'll see some highlights of this event, in which, by the way, I was also involved in the position of assistant payload responsible. You have seen so many launches, and what represented this launch to you, Simon?
Well, V100 is obviously a milestone. But I started doing commentaries back on launch V32, so I've seen 60 or 70 commentary or viewing, and I must say that V100 was not particularly special in that every launch for me is a moment of excitement and tension.
Well, some numbers might be interesting to summarize Arianespace activities, as after flight 100 there were 163 passengers put into orbit, which represents 281.6 tons of cumulated mass. Of this 163, 40 were major spacecraft of an average mass of 2,575 kilo during the last 30 months.
A particular figure that we might quote regarding flight V100 is the reliability factor after this long string of launches.
Yes, indeed. The reliability factor at this point was 96.5 after 29 successful flights in a row, which is right now, we can say this, the best one among the commercial launch vehicles. This launch was an Intelsat 803 GTO mission.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage.
And we have liftoff.
Décollage, séparation, Intelsat 803.
Well, this was on September 23, and of course we were happy customers.
Well, Flight 100 closed one chapter, so the next flight, logically, opened a new one, but what a new one. Only 11 days ago, in fact I must correct that figure, 13 days ago, Ariane 5 lifted off from the ELA-3 pad. We're going to show you some pictures of the campaign and of course the liftoff sequence itself. We don't think you'll be disappointed.
Yes, I was also here to help my good old friend Georg Scheller of Space Night to report on this event. I can tell you we were emotionally at the highest before and during that flight.
This clip, in fact, requires no commentary.
Attention pour le décompte final. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage Vulcain. Allumage EAP, décollage, liftoff.
Great. Rest assured, ladies and gentlemen, we'll have more to say about Ariane 5 a little later on. But returning to real time, Eckhart, we've just had the final pre-launch weather report, I think.
Weather report is okay. The wind in altitude is the right direction. There is no risk of thunderstorm, and we have the wind on the ground within the frame we have set.
Well, that's a relief after the anxieties of the last couple of days. Our last clip brings us almost up to date. Shot just 6 hours ago, we see the gantry withdrawal.
The gantry is still against the hardened umbilical tower, which is 74 meters high and up to the 13th floor in concrete. And above that is 10 floors in steel structure, comprising the third stage feed arms. The gantry itself is 3,000 tons of steel on wheels, 100 meter high. It is the biggest mobile building in Europe.
Well, it's not surprising it takes almost an hour to move back, what, 150 meters, something like that. So for these last few hours, Ariane has been anchored to the launch table by the hooks, and as we saw in an earlier clip, the cryogenic arms. We're going to have a peep inside the launch control center in a moment.
Yeah, it's a launch control center with Jean Rebeu as the COL or launch vehicle operations manager. 13 kilometers from here and 1 kilometer from the launch vehicle. From here are controlled all operations related to the launch vehicles. Here, Jean Rebeu. 2 computers help the operators during the last minutes and essentially during the synchronized sequence to manage the about 5,000 messages or 100 measurements per second.
Of course, at this stage, it is relatively quiet in there because they will be preparing to switch into the synchronized sequence, which we'll talk to you about in just a few moments. On the status panel, everything is still green, and we now approach this major status transition after a countdown which has been running for 14.5 hours. We come up to the synchronized sequence, the last 6 minutes of this long count. And in a moment we shall get the announcement from the DDO.
À tous de DDO, attention pour le début de la séquence synchronisée. Top, à 0-6 minutes.
And we have entered the synchronized sequence. So what has changed? What's new, Eckhart?
Well, from this moment, the synchronized sequence is meant to feed with information and to control the launch vehicle for flight readiness. The sequence is fully automatic, and all systems, base, launch vehicle and passengers, are linked to the same count.
So the human control element has
nearly disappeared. Computers are assisting human decision-makings.
Now we're going to have a look at the cryogenic arms, the fueling arms for the third stage. These are used to fuel up the liquid oxygen, liquid hydrogen tanks right up to within a few minutes of liftoff. And here we see a rather curious picture, which is the combination of the images from two cameras, which are brought together, as you see, to squeeze out the core body. Those arms will open just 5 seconds from ignition and liftoff. Now perhaps a summary of the main events in the last few minutes of this count.
Yeah, well, at H-3 minutes we will have a hydrogen tank on flight pressure. -2 minutes we will have the oxygen tank on flight pressure. And -1 minute will be the switch on board power.
And in fact the satellites themselves are already on autonomous power.
They are since a while already on internal power, of course.
Well, we've had several peeps into the Launch Control Center, and looking around here in Jupiter in Mission Control, everything is really very quiet. Under the surface it must be extremely tense. But what about the other facilities, the ground stations, the tracking stations, telemetry and so on?
Well, essentially in CDL, in the Launcher Control Center, people now are watching the computers, and unless the computer stops the count, there is no more action from the humans. It is similar, of course, in the downrange tracking stations, which are bound to the same count.
Well, in a few moments now, Ariane will lift off and very quickly start dropping hardware into the ocean. So what about warnings to shipping and aircraft in the fallback, in the drop zone?
Well, there's an official notification and warning issued to the aircraft and the ships. And there is no chase plane, of course, to get them out of the sky, but they know exactly at what time and what trajectory the Ariane rocket will climb over the ocean.
And presumably they will have had updates in the last 48 hours like everyone else.
Yes.
So we've said the count's been running for 14 and a half hours. Obviously the early part of the count is used to establish the order in which tasks are executed and to check that they are performed correctly, but at some stage the relative timing must become predominant in its importance.
Yes, exactly. Now we are approaching very important steps at -2 minutes with the oxygen tank on flight pressure in a few moments, and 1 minute later we will switch on board power.
Well, we still have a nice set of greens there on the left of your screen, with our count running, almost hitting, we are into the last 2 minutes there.
And after -1 minute, which is the switch on board power, is at -40 seconds the start of the first stage servo motors, and -12 seconds the stop of payload venting, and -9 seconds the start of the fly program and turn on of the inertial platform.
Well, I think this is just the moment to give a word for latecomers. You're just, and only just in time, to witness liftoff of Ariane Flight 102 carrying Sirius 2 and CAKRAWARTA 1. So, gentlemen, top up your drinks, steady, steady, and move away from the bar and closer to the screen, please. Not long now.
À tous de DDO, attention pour moins 1 minute. Top à 0 moins 1 minute.
Indeed, not long now. We're into the final minute. The launcher is on onboard power.
Start of servo motors. And stop of payload venting.
The internal guidance platforms will be released at -9 seconds and the arms at -5 seconds. And as the DDO
À tous de DDO, attention pour le décompte final.
is a good counter, so we'll let him say it.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage. Décollage. Tous les paramètres sont normaux. Propulsion normale. Début de la manœuvre en roue libre.
A beautiful clean burn, the sight we've been waiting for, particularly over the last 48 hours. A clear view, a clear picture from the camera, the tracking cameras in the launch zone. We shall sooner or later switch to the
Tous les paramètres sont normaux.
infrared on the Devil's Island group. We're starting to get announcements from the DDO indicating that all onboard parameters are strictly nominal.
Tous les paramètres bord sont normaux.
We have now seen 480 tons on the ground, of which will 4,855.
Pilotage, trajectoire normale.
4,855 separated
Passage du
mass.
transsonique.
And a check already at 1.5 minutes intermission. We're at a height of 12 kilometers and a
Tous les
velocity
paramètres sont
of
normaux.
half a kilometer per second. Here in Jupiter 2 we can hear the rumble of Ariane just over our heads. Occasionally on the viewing sites this
Trajectoire et
sound
propulsion
also
nominale.
gets through.
Approximately at 151 seconds we will approach the moment of liquid booster separation, and we will be then at an altitude of 41 kilometers and a speed of
Tous les paramètres sont normaux.
1,553 meters per second, or 1.5 kilometers per second.
We still have a very clear picture in this night sky, and in a moment we'll give you an explanation of
Arrêt de propulsion des 4 pales.
the trajectory plot on your screen. Separation of the boosters
Tous les
live
paramètres
on your
normaux.
screen,
Séparation des pales.
and in a moment we shall have a computer-assisted replay of this first separation. There we go. On flight
Tous les paramètres sont normaux.
102, and we continue to get good news from the launcher telemetry transmitters, and we'll also explain how that information comes to us through the DDO in a moment or two. Now, Eckhart, we've had the trajectory plot on our screen for quite a while now. It'll be with us right through to separation of the payloads.
Tous les paramètres sont normaux.
Some explanation, please.
Yeah, well, the ground, you see the ground track. There is a nominal track, and the white plot you see going over that is the actual plot of the launch vehicle, and you see it's precisely on target, as we say, and we are approaching separation of
Extinction du
first
premier étage.
and second stage.
Burnout of stage 1,
Séparation premier, deuxième étage.
separation 1 and
Allumage
2,
deuxième étage. Pression
Ignition.
foyer normale.
ignition of stage 2, and combustion pressure nominal. The data column on the right of your
Tous les
screen,
paramètres sont normaux.
the 3 items to watch are T for time intermission, A for altitude, and V for launcher velocity on the bottom line. We're targeting 9.7 kilometers per second, which when we get there will be about 35,000 kilometers per hour. In a moment or two we shall be separating the fairing, at which point the payloads will be open to what remains
Tous
of
les
the
paramètres
atmosphere.
sont normaux. Largage de la coiffe.
And we have fairing separation. We're right now at an altitude of 110 kilometers. In the meantime, it's climbing and climbing. And we are outside the atmosphere, so no friction.
So one of the objectives right through the flight is to drop surplus mass as soon as one can, and that is why we get rid of the
800 kilograms of fairing,
which is perhaps
Tous les paramètres sont normaux.
seemingly negligible compared with 480 tons, but every little counts.
and we just saw Mr. Giovanto, director of Media Citra, awaiting separation of its spacecraft, which will be the second after Sirius 2.
Well, like everyone else, he's glad to see us get off the ground this evening. We shall have in less than a minute from now separation of the second and third stages. We shall have a changeover there because the third stage is a cryogenic powered segment of the vehicle, and of course the chill down process.
Extinction au deuxième étage. Séparation deuxième, troisième étage. Allumage troisième étage.
Then we have the satisfactory sequence,
Pression
burnout,
normale.
separation and ignition of the third stage. It's always a very good piece of news in mid-flight.
We're now at 5.5 kilometers per second and altitude 172 kilometers.
Tous les paramètres sont normaux.
And we have here one of the coordinators from the Sirius 2 team.
And perhaps a quick word on the separation, the interstage separation procedures, because we've had two already.
Well, this separation of the stages is done via linear charge cord device.
Acquisition par la station de Natal.
It is simply said the stages are cut away by explosive lines.
Just cutting in there for a second, we have acquisition by the first downrange tracking station Natal in Brazil. This will be followed by Ascension Island and Libreville later on in the launch, and we'll give you the announcements when they occur. And in fact we have some more computer assisted to show you the transition to Natal tracking. We have a long burn time with the third stage, and this always gives us the opportunity to talk about other things, so to speak.
Tous les paramètres sont normaux.
And this is the moment to move back to talk about Ariane 5 and that fantastic launch sequence we saw a few moments back. The success of 502 has resulted in a flurry of new business for the industrial partners, Eckart, those engaged in production of Ariane launchers, because a number of new production contracts have been signed.
Yes, indeed, we have signed in order to cope with the market demand. In order to satisfy the market demand, we have ordered 20 additional Ariane 4. That means in a total we will have ordered and built 92 Ariane 4s after that. And we also ordered 14 Ariane 5.
That order is
Tous les paramètres sont normaux.
Is in process, is it not, the 14? And I think there's news of a new Ariane 5 order scheduled for next year.
Yes, indeed. As I mentioned it before, a little bit too early possibly. We have 14 additional Ariane 4 launches. That means launch vehicles number 503 or the third and until the 5th will be available for launch in 1998. While the Ariane 503 will be launched during the second quarter of 1998, and the precise dates will then be made in January, will be set up in January 98. The second batch is planned also in 98. There will be 20, followed by an additional quantity of 30.
And I apologize, I must pay closer attention to what you say, Eckart. to avoid another stumble like that. In a moment we shall see a slight change in the pattern of the trajectory, which where the altitude value has been climbing steadily.
Perte normale par les moyens de
in
courbe.
a moment or two
Pilotage
there will
normal.
be a slight fall off in altitude and a dip in the curve on your screen. I think we should explain that so that nobody gets worried about what they could take as a problem.
Well, there's no problem. You see the target trajectory is visible, and we have the plot exactly on it. It is, of course, compared to the curve of the Earth, it is a straight trajectory, but comparing to the Earth curve, it looks, of course, in this case, like a ascending curve or descending at the first time, and building up speed.
So is this part of the slingshot principle?
Yes, we start here getting the real slingshot effect. We're at 6.5 kilometers per second and aiming at approximately.
We're about 2/3 of the way to orbit injection velocity. And our altitude, as you will see, if you're looking closely at that data column on the right, we're dropping a kilometer or two at the moment. Well, this is the
Propulsion
first,
normale, pilotage calme.
and there's another entirely satisfactory announcement from the DDO. Combustion on the third stage is absolutely nominal. This is the first Ariane-Start video transmission when we've really had a lot to talk about Ariane-5 activities. And of course, numerous new and previously on-hold horizons have been opened up with the success of Flight 502. So, perhaps first of all, a rundown of preliminary conclusions to Flight 502.
Yeah, the preliminary conclusion is that it was a complete flight, a first complete flight, rich in information and observation. All phases of a real flight have so been experienced. All stages and systems have worked properly, and all measurements are available. That means we have about 1,000 measurements to evaluate and to examine.
So, how do things look then from the point of view of the future Ariane-5 operator, namely Ariane-Start?
Ariane-Start will take
Acquisition du
over.
lanceur par la station d'ascension.
And we have acquisition of the launcher by the Ascension Island downrange station. And some pictures of Ascension Island tucked in there behind the trajectory plot. Nice for a summer holiday, eh?
Tous les paramètres sont normaux.
So, you were saying, Descartes.
Yeah, Ariane-Start will take over the ELA-3 launch facilities in November 98. And flight number 503 or 503 will take place under ESA-CNES responsibility, but with Ariane-Start operators. And of course, Ariane-Space will, in some time from now, make the selection of the spacecraft for flight number 503.
Will this be a commercial launch, or perhaps not yet?
It will, of course, not yet be the full commercial launch, because, as I said, it will take place under ESA-CNES responsibility.
Silly question.
No question is silly. Only answers might be.
Well, so
Fin de
anyway,
visibilité par la station de Natal.
talking of operation, the new launcher Ariane-5, is it? Could you say it's more complex or simpler to operate from the future Ariane-Start point of view?
It is simpler. It is obviously simpler.
Well, I can think of one reason, a fairly obvious one. That's the number of engines Could this be a clue to what you're about to?
Yes, of course. As you notice on this flight, we have, if we count correctly, we have 10 engines, isn't it?
4 plus 4 plus 1 plus 1 makes 10, yes, good.
That's, and on Ariane-5 we have only 4 engines, and among them 2 are solid propellant boosters, could count as a stage. 1 is cryogenic and 1 using storable propellant.
Well, of course, we have a major difference between the two launches in the cryogenic element. In Ariane 4, and we're burning cryogenic propellant now, it's the last small third stage motor, whereas the cryogenic part of Ariane 5 is gigantic. Does this contribute to the simplification?
Indeed, it contributes to the simplification, and furthermore it contributes in the sense that we ignite this engine on ground. After checkout of the engine, we then ignite the solid boosters, which will deliver 90% of thrust needed for liftoff. So we have a safe and absolutely smooth ignition sequence, which helps to verify the good behavior of the liquid oxygen and
Tous les paramètres sont normaux.
And we also have a remarkably fast start, do we not? Because as long as I've been doing launch commentaries, we've always, when we've happened to be launching a 44P with 4 little tiny solid propellant boosters, very fast off the ground compared with the other versions, but Ariane 5 knocks them all cold.
Oh yes, indeed. It takes off very rapidly.
Well, 501, of course, was a disappointment, but I'm sure a lot of lessons were learned, and out of evil cometh good.
And we learned a lot, of course, and we'll have an equally valuable learning curve on 502.
Where there were a number of minor anomalies, and these will also teach us. I mean, what is a test qualification flight for if it's not to get the bugs out?
Exactly.
One other thing that struck me as we saw the clip of the Ariane 5 liftoff was the fact that there seems to be no anchor system. There's no hooks like we have for Ariane 4. There are no cryogenic arms to hold it in place up until the last moment. So what gives?
Your assumption is right, there are no hooks. It's kept on the table by its own weight.
Tous les paramètres sont normaux.
And everything's okay. And the cryo feed system is below the launch vehicle in the table.
That must have been what we saw in that sequence, the slow motion bit, with all those skittles bubbling around underneath, and then that big plate that came clamping down. What was that plate?
That was the protection to prevent the flames of the center engine to destroy the feed system. In fact, this feed system is a kind of suppository system.
Wow. Anyway, we are now approaching shutdown of stage 3. We're getting very close. By my arithmetic, we should have less than a minute.
Yes.
Propulsion normale.
And speed shall be about 9.7 kilometers per second.
So we're getting very close to orbit injection.
Acquisition par la station de Libreville.
Now we're over Africa already. Nearly over Africa, I must say.
Yes. Where's that? What have we got in
It's
pictures?
the Libreville
Oh, that's
station.
the Libreville ground station, of
Yes.
course, yes.
Yes. So in a few minutes we flew over the Atlantic, you see.
Quicker than 747 or even Concorde.
Yes.
One thing that always strikes me is this, the final build-up of launcher velocity. We get to the 9 kilometer second mark, and we seem to hover there, and one wonders, are we going to make it, are we going to make it, are we going to get to 9.7? And in the last few seconds, we've got from 9 to 9.5, so we're...
Il reste 30 secondes de poussée.
And 30 seconds left of thrust for the cryogenic third stage.
And that will give the right push and the right speed.
And in fact, the point of orbit injection is shutdown of stage 3, is that correct?
Yes, it's exactly that.
Fin de poursuite par ascension.
And then afterwards we have the orientation sequence.
Well, we'll give you a blow-by-blow account as soon as we have confirmation.
Extinction du H10.
Shutdown of stage 3. Shutdown, not burnout. There's some significance there.
Yes.
Début de manœuvre du composite.
Burnout would mean that we exhaust all fuel on board. In our case here we keep some fuel on board because we have to deorbit, or at least to change orbit of the third stage for avoidance maneuvers, and also to avoid any explosion of the third stage later on, which could damage the spacecraft and other components.
Well, at some point there is the passivation operation for stage 3. That is presumably after completion of the avoidance procedure, when the distance between the two
La
spacecraft.
manœuvre d'orientation se poursuit normalement.
Yeah, as you say, passivation, it's rendering passive. I mean,
that is dumping
the extra fuel overboard.
Right. And for that matter, what happens to stage 3 after separation of the satellites?
It will remain in approximately same GTO orbit, but of course largely separated. A large separation which will increase over the time.
And a lot of people in building S1, the satellite teams huddled over their consoles, will be getting pretty excited now because separation of the first passenger, Sirius 2, is imminent. Just how imminent? Can you tell us, Eckhart?
Yes.
Fin de la manœuvre d'orientation du composite.
At 1,310 seconds approximately. And you see the altitude is rapidly increasing because we are going away from the globe.
Right.
And we are already on the way for GTO.
Indeed. And the other thing that we can compare there is the increase in altitude and the slight drop-off in velocity, which is perfectly normal as what is still for the moment, for a few seconds more, the composite, the two spacecraft and the third stage, moves up to apogee.
Yes. Waiting for spacecraft separation.
Début de mise en spin.
Spin maneuver.
Séparation Sirius 2.
We have spacecraft separation.
Indeed, and there is a certain amount of muted applause here in mission control out of courtesy for the second passenger, who they have got to wait another 5 minutes.
I must say here that the performance of this
Début de manœuvre d'orientation.
The performance of this launch while waiting for separation of CAKRAWARTA, and we can lose some words about that. We had 4,855 kilograms performance required, and that was after flight 93 the second heaviest launch we ever have made. Flight 93 was indeed 4,900 kilograms.
So we were batting on limit again.
Yes.
Well, we have a preparation sequence again for the second separation, and this includes something new compared with Sirius 2 in that CAKRAWARTA was installed inside the spelder structure, and we have to remove the top of the spelder before CAKRAWARTA can get out.
Yeah, it's a dual launch system. Mini spelder, it's a small spelder. And it's as it would be made, tailor-made for this spacecraft, for the CAKRAWARTA spacecraft. In terms of mass, it's a 1,385 kilo spacecraft, which is, according to recent spacecraft evolution, is still small spacecraft in terms of mass, but also in volume.
I think we could say a quick word about the separation procedure for the top of the spelter, and then talk about how we release the actual spacecraft. Could we do that?
Certainly we can do that. The upper part of the spelter is removed by the linear charge cord device. That means separation system, explosive separation system, as all the others, and it's pushed away from the lower part by
Séparation de la spelda.
we have spelter separation announcement,
So our timing is very good there.
and the separation of the spacecraft is done via
Début de manœuvre d'orientation.
release of a clamp band, which is a kind of belt holding the adapter and the spacecraft together. And once the clamp band is released, there are springs pushing
Just push it apart.
push it apart,
Yes.
imparting the necessary velocity, additional velocity.
And in the clamp pad system, there's a device or devices which has always amused me, because there's things called catchers, and we're not talking baseball. They are simply, I believe, to catch the band so it doesn't spring back onto the
L'orientation du composite se poursuit normalement.
flanges of the adapter and spacecraft.
Yes, it's somewhat elastic, the clamp band, of course, and when it jumps away, you must hold it back, catch it.
So we are coming up to the second passenger separation, which will be almost but not quite the end of mission for Ariane.
Le composite est stabilisé.
Spin is stopped on what remains of the third stage. And the second passenger.
This is a stabilized spin. We have a little spin rate of for both spacecraft.
Début de mise en spin.
And we have here the beginning of the spin.
Just a few seconds.
Séparation CAKRAWARTA.
And now I'm sure you can hear the applause, unbridled applause, satisfaction, relief.
And Steve Nichols and Chen Chao congratulating each other, and the other spacecraft representatives from Sirius, also Tommy Anderson and Guy Burr from Aerospatiale.
The cigars will be out in a moment, but now there is... the celebrations will start very soon, I can assure you.
Well, good luck for NSABs and G Americans, as well as OSC Orbital Spacecraft Entertainment and Business Idea.
The job, of course, for the satellite teams to say it's only just begun is ridiculous, because they've been working for months and years to achieve this point. But there's a lot ahead of them in getting their satellites onto orbit station, and running through the in-orbit test procedures before they come on stream, respectively, in how long from now?
À tous de DDO, attention pour le décompte final.
We have a replay.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage. Décollage. Tous les paramètres sont normaux. Propulsion normale. Début de la manœuvre en roulis.
For anyone who was worried 20-odd minutes ago about those bits and pieces falling off the launcher, nothing wrong there. It was merely the thermal cladding on the second stage. And we have another replay coming up, taken from a different angle with another camera.
2, 1, top. Allumage. Décollage.
As you noticed, the result was exactly the same.
We will soon have the CAKRAWARTA acquisition from Perth, Australia.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, top. Allumage. Décollage. Tous les paramètres sont normaux. Propulsion normale. Début de la manœuvre en roue libre. Tous les paramètres sont normaux.
Well, we've seen that liftoff 4 times now, and I think we can at last claim our 30th successful launch on the Trot.
Yes, we can do that now, and we can also say that right now we have 180 launch contracts signed since 1981 and before Flight 102. So 43 satellites remain to be launched. This represents 2 to 3 years of launching at this year's pace and is $3.3 billion worth.
That's great. And coming up now we have
Mesdames, Messieurs,
some words.
ladies and gentlemen, we are proud once more tonight to celebrate a new Ariane success. And we are proud for our 2 customers, SIRIUS 2 and CAKRAWARTA 1. We launched Flight 102 safely and successfully. And I'm sure that everybody understood the 2-day postponement for safety purpose. Kourou is among the safest launch bases in the world, and we are also proud of that. The 2 spacecraft for our 2 customers, SIRIUS 2 and CAKRAWARTA 1, are on an accurate geostationary transfer orbit right now, and this is a very good thing. And I would like to take the opportunity to present in the name of Arianespace the congratulations for all the customer teams, from the Guyana Space Center teams, and from the Arianespace and its industrial partner for the success. This flight is the 30th follow-on success for Ariane, and I'm sure that everybody is happy about that. We can assure here that everybody do his best on this launch base to ensure a high launch rate for a high-quality launch service. With such a performance, Europe, through Arianespace, confirmed his leadership in the space launch service. And this new success after 502, and I remind everybody that this 502 flight occurred only 13 days ago, we think that Europe has the full capacity to propose to the launch market the launch service it requires. In this way, Arianespace decided to order 20 Ariane 4, 20 additional Ariane 4, thus giving with Ariane 5 a launch capacity of 12 to 14 launch a year until the year 2002. The customer confidence is the best proof of our position. We have yet 41 spacecraft to launch, and probably soon additional contract to come. I would like, in the name of Arianespace, to thank deeply our 2 customers, NSAB and GE Americom, his partner, and Indovision and Orbital Science for their confidence in Ariane and in Arianespace. With Switzerland, our cooperation is old. We have launched in 1989 Tele-X, and next year we expect to launch Sirius 3 in October 98. With Orbital Science, it is a new customer, and we are very happy for this success, and we can say welcome in the Ariane Cloud. We wish to our customer a full success in their orbital activity, in their orbital operation that are going to start soon, we hope, from tomorrow. And right now, on these days, we are preparing for the next flight, Flight 103. On board 2 spacecraft, JCSat for a Japanese telecommunication spacecraft, and Equator S, which is a German scientific spacecraft. This flight is going to occur the very beginning of December. And finally, before the end of the year, we are preparing Flight 104 with Intelsat 804 to be launched before Christmas. So thank you for your attention, and once more, congratulations to our 2 customers. Well, I would like to give the speech to Mr. Klaas Angard from NSAB, and let me congratulate you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your kind words. Ladies and gentlemen, this is indeed a very, very happy moment for me and my colleagues in the Nordic Satellite Company. Sirius 2 is, as a matter of fact, sold out, and we have customers eagerly waiting to start to use it. Furthermore, with Sirius 1 and Sirius 2, we will have 36 transponders altogether in 5 degrees east. And that is actually more than our main competitor have in 1 degree west. And in addition to that, as you said, we are coming back here in 9 months to launch Sirius 3. So the future looks bright. I would like to thank Ariane-Start for your excellent performance, and I want to thank all those who have been involved in the Sirius 2 project for very motivated and very skilled work. And finally, I want to thank our customers for their patience and confidence in us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Angard. So I would like to give the speech to Mr. R.I.F. for Indovision, please. Here he is, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, and fellow team members, I do not need to tell you how happy we are to have just witnessed the successfully launch of our satellite, CAKRAWARTA. It is with much humility that we thank Almighty God for guiding us throughout this project and for his helping hand today. I think you can see from my face that this is a fantastic day for my country, Indonesia. As I mentioned earlier, this event marks the culmination of 7 years of planning and hard work. And to see the Ariane 4 launch with vehicles take off, and to hear that the mission is proceeding successfully is the answer to all of our dreams. I can assure you that everyone back in Indonesia shares in the joy of this occasion and send their congratulations to everyone who has helped to make this the beginning of the information age for Indonesia. CAKRAWARTA will bring low-cost television and multimedia services to all the peoples of my country. The launch represents the coming of age of my company, the Datacom Asia Group, as a member of the global multimedia community. Once again, our thanks to everyone involved with the project, both from those of us here with you and from all Indonesian. In closing, we wish to say a special thanks to all the many people in our government who supported this project from the very beginning, and those of you here who did such an excellent job of supporting the launch of CAKRAWARTA. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Je souhaiterais simplement rajouter quelques mots quand même en français pour tous nos invités et dire combien nous sommes heureux ce soir d'avoir effectué ce lancement, tous ici sur la base spatiale. Je crois qu'il faut souligner que ce retard qui a été dû à des raisons météorologiques et pour des raisons de sauvegarde montre bien le caractère de sécurité de cette base de lancement et qu'aucune impasse n'est faite dans ce domaine, bien entendu. Comme on l'a dit il y a un instant, et je ne vais pas reprendre tout le discours, je crois que ce nouveau lancement, survenant seulement 13 jours après le lancement de 502, montre bien la capacité opérationnelle de cette base de lancement et la capacité d'Ariane-Espace en tant que transporteur spatial à faire face à toutes les demandes du marché, ce marché qui est actuellement en train de monter et auquel nous devons répondre, bien entendu. Et ceci est une belle démonstration. Je rajouterai que la commande supplémentaire de 20 Ariane 4 vient renforcer la capacité de lancement avec une capacité de 12 à 14 lancements d'ici 2002 et tout le monde est déjà engagé sur ce programme actuellement. Enfin, eh bien, nous allons attendre d'avoir toutes les nouvelles pour nos clients satellites. On sait déjà que le satellite Sirius a été acquis. Je n'ai pas les informations concernant le satellite CAKRAWARTA, mais nous attendrons avec beaucoup d'impatience leur mise en orbite et finale, et puis leur mise en début d'opération. Donc encore merci à tous et bravo à nos clients.
Top. Allumage. Décollage. Tous les paramètres sont normaux. Propulsion normale. Début de la manœuvre en roue libre.
A beautiful clean burn, the sight we've been waiting for, particularly over the last 48 hours. A clear view. Well, Deckard, I think that really is final proof if we needed it. And so, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. The show is just about over for tonight, but not the celebrations. It's been our pleasure and privilege to have you with us, and we look forward to the next time. As recently announced, this will be at the beginning of December with flight V103 carrying JCSat and Equator S, with another flight to come after that just before the end of the year. So this is good night and au revoir from Kourou, from
Eckhard Weinrich.
Now give it them in all those languages, man.
God natt Sverige and Denmark, and Slamat Pagi Nusantara.
Well, I can't do that. I'm just Simon Hayes. Bye.